Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring the illustrious Artmages with a guest appearance by my favorite little guys, the Punks. The idea here is to make what is primarily an Artmage deck, but add a convincing normal summon, extra extension, and the ability to get a negate online early to combat Nibiru. It's kinda similar to the Artmage K9 build from Advanced, but obviously K9's not really playable in Genesys. So if you like drawing cards and putting negates on board, then let's get started. We'll start with the Artmages, since they are the more important engine here, and for that we have to start with the lore twink himself, Medius. On normal or special summon, he can summon a power patron from the deck, and if he's in the graveyard, he can shuffle a monster from hand or field back into the deck to summon himself back out, but he does banish when leaving the field. We're on 2 because we don't really want to open him. He's not our best normal summon, that's like Zeoman. But it's not the worst, and it's a very important card to have access to, so we want at least 2. We're only on the Artmage Power Patron here, who fusion locks his while it's on board, but lets you fusion summon as a quick effect during the main phase, and when sent to grave, say as fusion material, you can search an Artmage spell trap. We have to play 2 because Medius can only summon from the deck, so it is a Garnet at 1. Then we're on 1 each of the Artmage names. These guys special from hand as long as you control any Artmage card, and gain bonus effects if you have 3 or more monster types on the field. Graflair survives battle once, summons and sets a spell trap, then you can pop a back row, which is a quick effect as long as you have 3 types. Littera summons and recovers a card from grave, then during the opponent's turn you can bounce her to summon a different Artmage from hand or grave, and then Finmel protects your low-level Artmages from targeting, summons and draws a card. And then if you have 3 types, you can quick effect negate all opponent's monsters and have their attack until the end of turn. These are all end board pieces as well as combo pieces, which is really useful because it means that we can naturally set up a half board even if we get slapped with a bunch of hand traps, and notably because they all summon from hand, we kind of laugh at Fuelos. For spells, we have 2 Theorealize, which dumps Medius from deck to grave as cost, then looks at the opponent's top card and lets you leave it there or put it on bottom. It can also modulate types and attributes, which doesn't come up a ton but is relevant. I would love 3, but we're tight on points and we have enough ways to access Medius that I decided a Heavy Storm was more valuable. Artmage Academic Arcane Arts Acropolis is the heart of the Artmage deck. It lets you normal summon an extra Medius, and more importantly lets you send a spell trap from hand to grave to search any Artmage name that you haven't already searched off of this effect this turn. You don't actually need a ton of spells to make it work, since 1 lets you search Graflair, and then you can search other cards to discard from there. Basically, this plus any spell trap is full Artmage combo, but be aware that you get locked into only special summoning Artmages and extra deck monsters after you use the search once. So you want to use this after any punk shenanigans you're doing. Alteration lets you place the field spell on field, or if you already have it, you can search any other Artmage card, and you can banish it from grave to negate an attack and special Medius. Effectively, this is copies 4, 5, and 6 of Acropolis, but with upside. 1 Assault is your normal set off of Graflair and can search Medius on activation, then lets you make a monster count as an Artmage for a fusion summon, and can send itself to protect the field spell from destruction. Succession isn't a core combo piece, but we search so much and we like to have 1 extra piece, and the others are pointed or hard lock you into Artmage full turn, so this is the best option. It's a quick play that fusion summons and gives what you summon 500 attack permanently, then you can banish it from grave to shuffle 3 Artmages back into the deck to use as later follow-up. It's a perfectly acceptable card, and the recycling is even better in Genesys where games go longer. Last up, Awakening can E-Telly out an Artmage or a Medius and prevent the opponent from stopping your fusion summons for the turn. That reads crazy and it's not bad, but honestly the card is better in the grave, where it can banish to bounce an Artmage you control and non-targeting destroy an opponent's card. You search this to discard it for Acropolis to turn the dodge and pop online. And then we're on to the Punks. Punk is an archetype primarily based on psychics that pay life to search. Here, the point is that they set up an early negate, provide bodies that Artmage can use in creative ways, and give us a convincing normal summon. That would be Zeoman, who can pay to search a monster. Simple, but effective, and when sent to grave, he can permanently boost a Punk on field by 600 attack. Shirakusai pays to fuse into our only Punk fusion monster, we'll get to that, and in a pinch can be left on field to quick synchro on the opponent's turn. Zeoman is always a starter, so he's at 3. Shirakusai is a starter if you have another name in hand to fuse with, and we want names in Genesys in general, so we have him at 2. Wagon then pays to search our field spell, and while on board, if the opponent targets a punk monster, we can draw a free card. Madam Spider pays to search our only trap, and can have an opponent's monster's attack, which never comes up, you never leave her on board. Then Deernote can reveal himself in another punk to summon one and send the other to grave, and if sent from field to grave, lets you reborn a punk. It is a combo piece that is extension in a pinch, and we like to have an extra one in deck to use on following turns, so we play 2. Ogre Dance discards to search any punk that isn't level 8, so it's basically 3 more Zeomans. Foxy Tune can discard itself and one other card to summon a punk from the deck. As good as the card is, it is 7 points, but mandatory for the 1-card combo, so we have to play at least 1. Both of these guys contribute a monster on field to summon themselves out, and they have battle phase effects that rarely come up, but are good to be aware of. Lastly for names, Rising Scale is the premier extender and can banish a punk card from hand or grave to summon himself out, and then pay life to add or summon a monster from deck or grave. Basically every hand trap works on this, but it's still a wildly powerful effect. Lastly, if an opponent's monster with a higher attack than Scale's base attack activates an effect, you can book it. This isn't normally super relevant, but if you need to make a half board, it is technically a disruption. Our field spell is the only search off of Wagon, and lets us banish a punk from grave to special one from hand, and more importantly, lets us draw a card when we pay life for a psychic's effect up to twice per turn. It's just searchable Pot of Greed with upside, you gotta love it. This is our quote-unquote bridge. We don't have a proper way into the Artmages, but because we want to use the punk engine first, and it draws 3 to 4 cards along the way, we're very likely to see Acropolis, Varnish, or Theorealize, and then we're good to go on that engine as well. Nashiwari is the search off of Madam Spider and just pops a card. Face down only if you don't control a punk, any card if you do. Lastly for engine, we are playing the Armored Xyz package, which requires full Armored Xyz in the main, which can immediately Xyz summon, which doesn't come up very often in this deck. But more importantly, you can banish it from the graveyard to equip an Xyz on the field with an Xyz either on the field or in the graveyard, and that equip protects the monster and boosts its attack. This card is kind of important because it lets us search a spell trap with the punk engine to discard once we start doing Artmage things. For non-engine, we don't have a ton of points, but I think Darkhole and Heavy Storm are the best bang for our buck. This is where I'll say that this is a going first combo deck. We can go second okay into an established board just by virtue of having a ton of extension, but we really want to see one of our breakers to simplify the board state a little bit. With 2 points left, I threw 2 Cyclones in the side. What else are you going to do with them? And we don't really want to inflate the deck size even more because there's not a ton of starters for the Punk engine available in Genesys. In the extra deck, Non-Finito can be made by fusing or by tributing Finmel and discarding a spell trap, then on summon lets you set a spell trap and quick effect fusion during the opponent's turn. Diactorus is the most important fusion here, which is why we have 2. This takes an Artmage and Medius specifically, and lets you ignition speed change a battle position, but more importantly is an Omni Negate and Destroy as long as you have 3 or more monster types. If he gets destroyed, you can also just summon out a Medius, which summons a Power Patron, which fuses back into Diactorus again. Nerva takes 3 Artmages, or can be contact fused by tributing 3 monsters of different types. While there's a field spell out, she can't be destroyed, and lets you change any Artmage monster's effect into a full board wipe once per turn. This card is difficult to justify in pure Artmage, but Punk makes enough bodies of different types that she's a lot more accessible here. Carp is the only Punk fusion and just lets you tribute itself to summon any 2 other Punks from deck. The idea here is that Shirakusai fuses any 2 bodies into the exact 2 bodies that you want instead. He also kind of helps close games a little, I guess. If you use him as synchro material, you can make a Punk able to attack twice this turn. The 7s might look weird, but getting both Zeoman and Medius negated is pretty common, and that leaves you with the materials for a black Rose Dragon to pop the board. No one expects Rose Dragon to come out of this deck, but it ends games and we have enough extension that we can normally piece together a board even after making it. Same thing with Zeta, but he's a disruption instead of board breaking. He lets you banish himself and an opponent's monster until the next standby phase. Dragon Drive is key to the Punk combos, letting you pay to search a level 3 Psychic, then if Drive is in grave and the opponent responds to your Punk card or effect, it can summon back out and the search happens again. Amazing Dragon lets you bounce a bunch of cards on summon or reborn a P.U.N.K, but sadly it is one or the other effect per turn. Jura is just a good generic unpointed 11 we can make to gain back some of the life that we pay for the P.U.N.K engine and pop the board on the opponent's turn. Torpedo is the first part of the Xyz package and can detach to draw a card. Then it ranks up into Fortress, which can detach to search the full armored Xyz trap from our main deck. Then it can rank up into Dark Knight Lancer, who is large, and if an equip spell equips to your monster, he can attach an opponent's monster to himself as material. Notably, you want to use the Xyz Engrave to equip either Fortress, who doubles battle damage, or Torpedo, who prevents targeting and stops the opponent from using cards or effects in the damage step, in addition to the attack and destruction protection provided from the trap itself. Last up, Jam Fever can slap over top of any other P.U.N.K extra deck monster and can detach a material to draw, and detach a material to negate and destroy a monster effect. This is the main payoff for P.U.N.K, and depending on the combo, you summon it as either number 5 or number 6, which means the opponent has to use Nibiru or other hand traps early, or they don't get to use them at all. And with that, let's go see the main combos. Alright, so first for combos, we're going to do just the Artmage stuff. Note this will lock you, and it doesn't take your normal summon, just your extra normal summon of Medius, which means if you have P.U.N.K, do the P.U.N.K stuff first. But here we're just going to activate Acropolis and use its effect to pitch any spell trap from hand to go get Graflair. We can activate Graflair to summon itself and set Assault. We can activate the Assault to go get Medius, then use that extra normal summon to summon out Medius, who can summon out the Artmage Power Patron. We can use the Power Patron to fuse itself and Graflair into Non-Finito. That's going to trigger Non-Finito to set Alteration, and the Power Patron is going to add our trap. We can then discard the trap to go get Litera, and then activate the Alteration to go get Finmel. That means that we now have access to everything from the Artmage engine, except for our one extra card that sometimes we access, but the important stuff's all here. So we can summon out the Litera and add Graflair back to hand, then we can summon out Finmel and draw a card. On the opponent's turn, we're going to activate in the draw phase Non-Finito to fuse itself with Medius into Diactorus, and then this is our end board. Doesn't look like much, but it's quite a bit. So Diactorus is an Omni Negate and Destroy. Great, love that. Don't have to explain how good that is. Finmel negates the entire monster row of the opponent's board. Love that. Great, don't have to explain that. Litera, little bit more explanation, but she can summon the Graflair from hand and return herself to hand, and then Graflair can quick effect pop a spell trap, which not quite as good as an Omni Negate, but still functional, especially if the opponent's deck needs like a field spell or something. Then out of the grave we have Awakening, which can bounce a used Artmage monster to pop, non-targeting any card on the opponent's field. So that's another destruction. And then lastly, we have Alteration, which can negate an attack. So that's 5 disruptions, 6 if you squint, off of just activating Acropolis and like going from there. Cool, cool. Then we've got the P.U.N.K combo, which note, this isn't actually going to be just a one-card combo. We'll draw into the Artmage stuff here just so I can show you how the deck kind of wants to do that. But you will see just the P.U.N.K side of the combo along the way. So we're going to start by pitching Ogre Dance to go get Zealman, then we can normal summon the Zealman and use his effect to go get Rising Scale. Rising Scale can banish the Ogre Dance from the graveyard to summon itself, and then summon out Shirakusai. We do the combo a little bit different here because we want different bodies to end on, so we're going to go into Amazing Dragon immediately. Note that because we have to bring back Zealman because we don't have another name in hand, we are vulnerable to Nibiru. The Jam Fever hits the board as summon number 6, but the idea is that you can finagle it to get there before summon number 6, or even if we get nibbed, we can just, go into Artmage from there, so it's not a big deal. But we slapped the Jam Fever over top of Amazing Dragon, and now the rest of our combo is protected. Then we can use Shirakusai to fuse into Rising Carp, and then diffuse into Wagon and Deer Note. Wagon can search the field spell, we'll immediately activate that before going into Dragon Drive. Dragon Drive is going to search our Madam Spider, and the Deer Note will bring back just any 3. I normally bring back Wagon, because then if the opponent, for whatever reason, tries to target one of our monsters, we can draw a card. It's like the only thing with possibly relevant text here. But we draw a free card off of the field spell because Jam Dragon Drive is a psychic and paid life. Then we can banish Zeoman from grave to summon Madam Spider and use her effect to get Dangerous Gabu, which is going to draw us another card. We haven't drawn into anything relevant yet, but we can overlay our 2/3s for Armored Torpedo, detach 2 to draw a card, and hey, look, that's a relevant card. Then we can rank up into Armored Fortress, use Armored Fortress to go get full Armored Xyz, and hey, remember when this was a 1-card combo? Isn't that crazy? And then we can replace the P.U.N.K field spell with Acropolis. If you didn't draw into the Artmage line, you would want to still stay at Fortress here, because you want to go to the opponent's turn with full armored set, use it to rank up Fortress into Dark Knight Lancer, because that puts the full armored in grave, so you can, then use its graveyard effect, which is the important part. Just something to keep in mind. But because here we drew into the Artmage side, we can just start the Artmage stuff. I rank up into Lancer, which doesn't really matter here because spoiler alert, we're going to tribute it for Nerva. But the actual Acropolis can pitch the Xyz for Graflair. Graflair can then do the normal Artmage thing, summon out Assault. But because our board is starting to get clogged here, and because we still have the Dragon Drive that doesn't do anything on field, the Lancer we wouldn't mind keeping, but, it's clogging up our board. And we have the Graflair body. We now have 3 different monster types, so we can summon out Nerva to make some space. Note that's not normal in Artmage. You don't normally get Nerva turn 1. You, don't make enough bodies for it, but here we definitely do. So then we can activate Vandalism Assault to add Medius, and then use our extra normal summon for Medius to summon out the Artmage Power Patron, and use its effect to fuse into Diactorus, which triggers the Power Patron in grave to go search the Awakening. Note, these are 3 different monster types still, so Diactorus's negate is now still online. Then we can pitch Awakening to go search Littera. We can activate Littera to summon herself and add back. Here I get the Awakening because we're pretending we didn't draw into these dark holes. If you have a dark hole you're not using, then get back the Graflair for follow-up next turn. But again, I'm just pretending we didn't draw into those. We don't want to discard the Gabu, so we'll get back Awakening, so we can pitch the Awakening again to go get Finmel. Then we can summon out the Finmel, set the Gabu, and then I just used Diactorus' effect to switch Nerva to attack position, because why not? But that's going to be it here. So now we have a Monster Negate and Destroy, an Omni Negate and Destroy. We still have the Finmel to negate the board. We have Nerva, who can just wipe the entire opponent's board instead of doing anything else, so we can use that off Littera. I believe it has to be a monster, so technically we can't use it off of Awakening, unfortunately, but that's still a pop. We're probably just going to use it off of Littera, or use Littera to bring back Graflair, and then Graflair effect, swap it into Nerva's effect is perfectly acceptable as well. And then notably we have full armored Xyz in the graveyard, which means we can grab this Xyz Armored Torpedo and stick it on our Jam Fever, which will make him giant, untargetable, and protect from destruction once. It doesn't actually let us use the Suck from Dark Knight Lancer, because as you can see our board's full, we just didn't have space for it, because we don't have the extra monster zone. But still, it is a useful piece to have. Cool, cool. Alright, Artmage P.U.N.K games, not the absolute best this week, but they're okay. The big problem with this deck in getting good games is that it is a combo deck, which means if we go off, the opponent typically has either no shot, or they just scoop, because they know they have no shot. Here, though, we're going first. They open Song of the Dominators, which tells me immediately this is Odeon. There's basically no other deck in the format that can feasibly play songs, turn 0, lock themselves out of stuff. I guess it could be Lab, but Lab's not that scary. So I kind of decide in the moment that they activate Dominators that I'm not going to do full combo. I'm just going to do the P.U.N.K stuff, because they can't go super crazy on their turn anyways. And if we do full combo, and it is something like Labyrinth, all we're doing is opening up the Artmage side of our deck to Karma Cannon and other extra disruptions. And since they can't go too crazy, I figured just doing the Punk stuff is probably enough. It's still like 4 disruptions on its own. So we end here. I leave it at Fortress because we need to get full armored in the graveyard, so we're just going to set it, use its effect to rank up the Fortress into Dark Knight. Dark Knight Lancer. I don't know why I was thinking Dark Ray Lancer for a second. Into Dark Knight Lancer, which then turns on the Suck from there. We've still got Nashiwari Surprise, which, since it's probably Odeon, is quite good at popping the field spell and just like disrupting their plays, and we still have our Negate. And then, obviously, 6 cards in hand leaves us a lot of follow-up. So they immediately rock the Treasures of the Kings, which, since they saw us search Nashiwari, tells me they don't have any other starters in hand and they just have to do that. So we immediately pop it, of course, but they have the Temple of the Kings they open, and they also just open Apophis the Serpent. They're probably playing 3 of it. So they can kind of go a little ways, but they walk right into our Monster Negate and Destroy, which means all they're going to be able to do is set 3 and pass, and I guess they decide that's not good enough. And they don't even know about the Artmage because this was game 1 of this match. So, commanding display there into a hand trap, into one of the better decks in the format. To be fair, it's pretty mediocre going second. But they had some plays, they had a negate that they could access. It's just, like, not enough even to just the Punk stuff. And then game 2, we are going second into X-Sabers. I've seen a couple of people trying to make this deck work in Genesys. The best build I've found is just Punk can bridge you into it and then hand rip 4, but for the most part I've seen people trying to avoid the hand rip thing, which I get, but unfortunately it is the most powerful thing that X-Sabers can do. But this opponent is not trying to do that. They're instead trying to set up an actual board. So they go Soza, which is a pop by tributing something. They go Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, which is a bounce of a high-level monster. And then they summon out Bruno on our turn using Gotham's Emergency Call, which allows them to quick synchro, presumably with the Garsem, or I guess it could be the Moonlight Dragon after using it. Oh, no, because it has to be Earth monsters. So with the Garsem into a 7, and then they've got whatever their set card is. Our hand is okay. We start by normal summoning Medius because we aren't going to be able to access the Punk engine. The only card we saw was Shirakusai, which is only a starter if we have another Punk monster in hand. Here we don't. So we just normal summon Medius, which brings out Power Patron, which turns on the Finmel in our hand. They immediately understand that if this Finmel hits the board, we get a quick effect negate their board. So they tribute the Soza to pop the Power Patron to keep us off of 3 different types, but Finmel just draws a card on summon, which means we draw into Heavy Storm. And then, of course, they go with Moonlight Dragon to bounce the Finmel back to hand so we don't get to actually use her effect later in the turn once we have 3 types. But unfortunately for them, we rip the Heavy Storm off of our 1 card draw, we search the Succession that we don't really need, but we have every other card we really need off of the Power Patron. So we can pitch the Succession and the Finmel to go into non-finito from hand, which is pretty cool. Use that to set a card. I said Awakening. It was probably incorrect here because it means that we don't get to pitch the Awakening. But if the game is gonna go another turn, this lets us summon out Power Patron to fuse on the opponent's turn. So it's not an awful play. We go Acropolis pitching Alteration to go get Grafflair. Grafflair can summon himself out, set another Alteration, so we can actually use this one to get Littera. Unfortunately, we used Finmel. We can't summon her back out, but we can banish the Succession to shuffle a bunch of stuff back in, including the Finmel. I search her here with the intent of summoning her off Littera on the opponent's turn. And then we just go to battle and crash non-finito to get rid of the 1 remaining disruption on their board, so they're left with Black Rose and a Dream. Oh, I didn't address that earlier. They summoned the Black Rose off of Bruno, but unfortunately they learned a hard lesson here where Black Rose can miss timing, because they summoned it in response to one of our cards. The Black Rose missed timing, it did not pop the board. Sorry, everyone's got to learn that lesson sometime. We go to their turn, they normal summon Garsem, which doesn't do a whole lot, and here you don't see it in the replay, but they keep trying to just go to battle. They want to go to battle and clear up our board before committing to anything, which is why I start pulling the trigger on all of these, because most of the Artmage effects are main phase only. So we get to Diactorus and Finmel, they go Saber Slash, which they probably just should have used early, because it's non-targeting, so even if we had like responded with Littera, they could just pop whatever we summoned off of it. So I don't know why they held it until they couldn't anymore. They try to go to battle. We go, okay, fine, we'll use Finmel to negate your board. This deck doesn't do a whole lot off of one card in hand either way. Then they go to end their turn because we have their monsters attacked, so they can't really go to battle profitably. So we pop the one card they set off of Graflair, and that pretty much does it. They've got just a couple of bodies and nothing else of any relevance. It's an okay game. The opponent misplayed a couple of times that maybe would have mattered, but honestly, if they couldn't have killed us on turn 3, we drew Ogre Dance, which gives us an entire another engine they haven't even seen yet. So, yeah, this is pretty powerful. Either engine in and of itself is pretty powerful. And we're back with closing thoughts on Art.Punk. So, the big takeaway here, I don't know, there's a couple things. One, I drew like crazy this week during games, even the ones you didn't see. I was drawing like 2 or 3 board breakers, even though we only have 5 in the deck, which definitely improves your chances going second for sure. But outside of that, even just, you saw either of our engines can kind of do the job on its own, which is pretty solid because that just means that any access to the other engine is just extension. So we're actually not like too bad going second, even though we don't have that much non-engine, and we can't play more non-engine because we don't have the points, and Punk is a really big engine that you can't reduce the size of in Genesys. There's like no way to boil it down to 10 cards because then it's just like adding 5 bricks for 5 starters, and that's not normally a great place to be. But yeah, like they work together. Drawing a million cards helps you draw into breakers. Drawing a million cards helps you draw into the Artmage stuff. And we do have a lot of starters for the Artmage stuff. We've got 8 that don't take our normal summon in an 18 card package, which is fine. It's like pretty good. And you saw in game 2 that like we don't mind opening an Artmage name because they're disruption. We can threaten the opponent with Finmel. We can threaten their back row with Graflair, so it's not a bad thing to just open one and be able to summon it out and say, deal with this immediately. That's one of the nice things about main deck-based archetypes, is that they are easier to put up disruptions earlier in your combos. Yeah, we do fusion summon, but a lot of our disruptions come out of the main deck, and that's really good going second. But anyways, that's going to do it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.